Welcome back everybody to KENAN TV. Following Israel Adesanya's UFC title win over Robert Whittaker, I personally had this feeling of it all happened before, right? And at first I really didn't know what it was, but as soon as I pondered a little bit more, I came to the realization that the trajectory that Israel Adesanya took to get to the world title and become the world champion was fairly similar to what Conor McGregor was able to do. And in a way, this will be somewhat of a Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya discussion video. It is fairly rare in the sport to have a fighter that can come into a division and just start to defeat their opponents in a very dominant manner, and that would always follow up until the world title fight. And in that fight, if the fighter that was dominant against all the other competitors, the contenders, and be dominant over the world champion and then win the world title, that is a fairly rare sight to see. And Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya were both able to do this. They were both pretty quick to become the world champion given the time frame that they had. Israel Adesanya became the world champion in about 1.5 years. Conor McGregor became champion in about 2.5 years, and I think 1 year of that was him recovering from an ACL injury, right? Well, luckily for Israel Adesanya, he did not have to suffer a torn ACL like Conor McGregor did. And if we were to compare both of their interim title fights, they both had to dig deep, they both were put in a pretty tough fight, and in the end, they both did come out of it as a victorious fighter. And for them both to go into their undisputed world title fights, for Israel against Robert, for Conor against Jose. And what arguably everybody would have assumed, those two opponents would have been respectively their hardest bouts, and they ended up coming out of it looking fairly invincible. Conor McGregor knocked out Jose in 13 seconds. Robert Whittaker got dusted in 2 rounds. One it would have been if Israel had just a couple more seconds in that round. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is just, I think it really comes down to a bigger discussion that I want to have with you guys. I think that I have recently tuned a bit too much myself into making a big format video, and I've kind of retracted myself from uploading a lot more videos about lesser, let's say, topics, right? Topics that may not have the same hype behind it, the same wave, the same attention. So with this, I am hoping to revive the old KENAN K and be a bit more active and just talk about a lot more things. Just in general, talk about whatever I feel like, essentially. Now, when it comes to these two, and especially in the case for Conor McGregor, as I always say at the end of my videos, in the end, only time will tell what will happen, is really something that we also have to kind of apply for today. When we take a look at Conor McGregor right now, it just seems like he's out of it, right? And it's fairly normal for a fighter to kind of tend to get out of the game and, you know, be 1 foot out of the door after a certain amount of success, after a certain amount of experience in the game. And it is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm fairly happy for Conor McGregor for him to be in the position that he is. But also we have to see how this entire sport has this one big cycle of a new fighter coming in, a new world champion, a new world superstar who just comes in and takes the game by storm. And when Conor McGregor did it, you know, we were fairly certain that nobody could kind of replicate what he did. And maybe in a way, sure, Israel Adesanya may not be a pay-per-view star like Conor McGregor is/was. However, I'm fairly certain that Israel can be as big as he could really be, as big as he was meant to be. And I think that is pretty big to begin with. Now, Israel Adesanya, if we were to place him in the Conor McGregor timeline of success and accomplishments, he's just right in the middle of, you know, being this close to the next big thing. And what that would be for Israel Adesanya would be a title win over John Jones at the heavyweight division. Now, right now, he has to be focusing on his next opponent at Paulo Costa, and in that way, Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya differ. Conor McGregor instantly went up in weight and tried to challenge for the world title, whereas Israel is still focused on what is next in his own division. Fair enough. But coming back to this entire thing of, you know, building a superstar, building the next guy in line, comparing both of the two, Conor McGregor, what he was able to accomplish in the sport was, you know, nothing short but spectacular. And in a way, you know, I don't want to sound like this is like the end of Conor McGregor. Like I said, in the end, only time will tell what will really happen. And personally, I don't think Conor McGregor is going to be done just from that UFC 2 to 9 fight. I think there's at least one more fight in him, and depending on the outcome of that fight, I think we can draw some speculation into the future of what could be next for him. For Israel Adesanya, he's right now in a position where he has always been active. He came into the sport, he went in, he took everybody out, he got his world title, and now he's at the top. Same thing that Conor McGregor did. However, right now it's about Israel Adesanya, not about Conor McGregor. And Conor, I think he's currently going to be turning 31, or he's just 30 right now. And I think the doors are starting to close on him. I think things are, leaving him. And I don't really know how that is going to be impacting Conor McGregor. I don't really think that it is really going to be beneficial for the game to, have him, kicked out of the sport, obviously, right? If you're just going to say, okay, I'm done with the sport, sure, take your leave. But I would have to say personally, the sport is a more exciting place with Conor McGregor fighting. And we have really seen Conor McGregor fight often, frequently, in 3-4 years. So time passes by, fighters get older, fighters get better, fighters get younger, right? Opponents get younger. And for Conor McGregor, if he wants to come back, I think he could have come back. Maybe by this point already, he could have had a fight, but with all the shenanigans that's going on outside of the octagon, that just seems pretty uncertain. And that is something that you just don't want to hear, right? If you're a fighter, you fight. For Conor McGregor, yeah, sure, you have your whiskey thing that's going on the side, but in the end, the sport is what made you, and you kind of have to stick to that, because you cannot just go ahead and be a football star and then turn around and be a basketball star all of a sudden, right? You kind of have to stick to your niche, stick to your realm of expertise, art, expression, whatever it may be. And that is currently what we're seeing from Israel Adesanya. And I think the biggest difference, and what makes Israel Adesanya a very good fighter in terms of turning him into the next big thing, is the consistency that he has in combat sports. He's a guy that fought 3 men in one night, has done multiple kickboxing tournaments, has fought fairly often, fairly frequently. I think it is his 5th fight in 13 months. And he's already a world champion. He's just not seemingly slowing down. He's already planning on going in there and fighting Paulo Costa. And he's already talking about fighting John Jones. And these are all things that set up events in the future. And if you're, for example, the UFC, that is exactly what you want to see. And that is exactly what they saw from Conor McGregor when he started fighting. And, obviously 4 years later, after the job was done, everything was done and over with, let's just say the train slows down. And when it comes to Israel is right at the climax, or close to the climax of his career. And if he can go in there and execute on the things that he's promising, it is really going to be a pretty exciting time in the sport. And I am sure that a lot more success awaits Israel. So if he can go in there and just stay true to what the formula was that got him to the spotlight, the main stage, I think the main stage can be a lot more brighter and a lot higher up. So if he just stays true to himself, stays true to the game, I think he can do a lot more things. And as the title suggests, how Israel Adesanya is replacing Conor McGregor, this is just the natural course of the sport. In sports, really, the young guys get old and then they end up leaving. And then the new guys that come in, they get old and they leave. And it's just this continuous cycle of the young dog becoming old and just leaving. This is how these things go. And when, for example, Conor McGregor first rose to the UFC, I think I really took notice of him when Ricardo Lamas made that little funny video of him. That's really when I took notice of Conor McGregor. And at first, yeah, sure, it was this pretty brash guy that said he was going to go in there and knock Jose Aldo out. But come on, really, nobody was really able to go in there and really even put a dent in Jose Aldo's legacy and get him out of there, right? Surely enough, that's really what he did. He goes in there and he just knocks him out in 13 seconds, does what he says he is going to do. Fair play to him. But besides that, this is just something that I really want to say to you guys personally who are watching right now. I think when it comes to these things in the sport, I think we really have to be less, I would say, emotional when it comes to these fighters, being who they are. I think no fighter is going to be what they could be if they weren't for them being themselves, right? Israel Adesanya, yes, he surely does his, funny Naruto Death Note references, and he's this pretty nerdy guy who is fairly young at heart. And I think we have to embrace these characters, right? If it wasn't for Conor McGregor being as brash as he is, if it wasn't for John Jones being as, tunnel visioned as he was, if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya doing his thing, if it wasn't for Henry Cejudo doing his, cringy stuff, really, what would the sport be like? And in a sense, I think that we really have to just embrace these guys to the fullest. I think that we just see too much, I'd say, personal opinion getting in the way, personal emotion getting in the way, and a lot of the time it kind of ruins the immersion. It kind of ruins what is going on. It kind of ruins the moments that this sport can bring to you. And it's really only later that you realize these things. And for example, right now with me personally, I don't really am personally too much emotionally involved with any of these fighters. I just kind of have this one step, back view on these fighters. I'm not really too mixed up in all of the he said, she says, because in the end, action is really what counts, and especially in this sport, which is, a combat sport, obviously. And I don't really know where I want to go with this video. It's just something that I want to talk with you guys about. So for Adesanya, I think we have to really embrace what is going on with him and the level that he has achieved in the sport. He's at a new climax. He's at a new just frequency and well on his way to becoming the next, I'd say, greatest of all time middleweight fighter if he can keep it up for, let's just say, another 5 years. Defend his belt at the rate at which he's fighting, and he could be there in no time. Or he could move up and fight John Jones. All of these things are really in his hand, and he can do all these things. He's still fairly able. He's in his prime years. He's very able and seemingly very healthy and ready to go at any minute. And when it comes to Conor McGregor, his story is a bit more on the closing side of things. He's kind of entering the end, and most of the important things that you can write about Conor McGregor have already been written. His best accomplishments are already behind him, right? So for Conor, I don't know where he is personally right now. He seems like a man that should be able to come back, but in this sport, really, seriously, a long time off, it is not good for you. We saw a lot with Chad Mendes. He took some time off, he came back. TJ Dillashaw got banned for 2 or 3 years. I highly doubt that he can come back as the same man. And if Conor can come back really right now, I think it's already kind of a bit too late. I wish he could have come back right in April, June, July, August, whatever, after his suspension was up. But these things are, all a part of the story. And in the end, you will truly see how it all will play out. But for now, the future is Israel Adesanya, and for me personally, the past is Conor McGregor for the most part. Maybe you can get 2-3 fights at most out of Conor McGregor, but I think we also have to realize that this chapter that we witnessed is going to be coming to an end fairly soon. Khabib Nurmagomedov said that he wants to retire in the next 2-3 fights maybe. And Tony Ferguson is about 36, 37 years old, so he's kind of getting close to the age of retiring himself. So all of the things that are happening right now, they're going to be a closing and the end of an era. And the last time I had this feeling was when George St. Pierre retired, and I didn't really realize it back then because I was just trying to be this little GSP hater, and I wanted to see Johnny Hendricks win the fight. But looking back at the time that he just left the sport, left the division, and there was this big hole that he left, it kind of was fairly odd, I don't know, it felt pretty weird. And when Conor is going to leave the sport, when Khabib is going to leave the sport, when Tony Ferguson is going to leave the sport, or the guys that are right now running the game and are like the biggest names, soon they will be coming to the end of their run, and their chapters and their books will be closed as well. So I think one big message that this entire video was supposed to be is just to enjoy the moment, enjoy these fighters, don't get too emotional in what they say or how they might want to handle their opponents, because in the end their opponents are their opponents, their obstacles, and if they can overcome it, hey, fair play to you. And if not, well, at least you tried. Nothing but respect. And that's also the main reason why I like combat sports or 1v1 sports. I never really liked to play football, basketball, because I never really liked to depend on teammates. And when it comes to people who are very emotionally invested in, let's just say, soccer, right, like these hooligans and stuff like that, I never really got that. And I've found it kind of odd that people would get that emotionally involved with a certain team, certain group, and that's why I really chose professional fighting, combat sports, because it was just an individual going in there trying to prove himself against another one. And the main enjoyment that I got out of that was just witnessing that all unfold in favor or against that certain individual. So I think in the end, that is really the most important thing that we can take out of mixed martial arts and this little time period of blossom that we have in the UFC, because it is a very, very good time that we're in. And in let's just say another 5 years, that's going to be pretty surely over and done with, or at least not the same anymore. So it is already not the same with Conor McGregor anymore. So I think we're nearing the end of an era, and I think we have to embrace it. So that's really what I wanted to talk about, kind of rant, if you will. So yeah, that was that. And as I always say, in the end, only time will tell what will truly happen. For now, I have been Kenan from Kenan KTV, signing off. Later.